For more than a year, this new counterculture, coexisting with the Angels, had been able to grow organically with little media attention. But in January 1967, a far larger free concert was organized. Known as the Human Be-In, it featured speeches from prominent figures Timothy Leary and Allen Ginsberg, alongside musical performances by the major new voices on the scene.
The Human Being was a huge event because it was the first one of its kind. You hadn't seen this kind of a huge crowd of countercultural people until the Human Being. So its example was extremely important.
It was made for television. It sort of is a signal to the national media that something interesting is going on in San Francisco's youth culture. The people who are on stage and speaking are also made for television. You get Timothy Leary and Allen Ginsberg in these kind of flowing robes, Leary spreading his message about the benefits of psychedelics.
6 words. Turn on, tune in, drop out.
I don't think word leaked out much about what was going on in San Francisco through the course of 1966. But with the Human Being in January of '67, it just exploded the beginning of that year, and the mythology was instantaneous. Harry Reasoner showed up, the American TV journalist, and clucked about the hippies. They think they're some kind of saint, you know? And in doing that, it delivered a coded message to young people everywhere that it wasn't as repressive, it wasn't as gray, that there was hope, and that you could go to San Francisco, grow your hair, and things would be different.
While across America, young people flocked to the Haight-Ashbury district in search of this utopia, in Britain too, the influence of San Francisco was soon felt. Countercultural ideas and fashions crossed the Atlantic, while touring musicians, including the Stones and the Beatles, were introduced to hallucinogenics by their American counterparts. Talk of the new drug LSD in particular led to fears that popular culture was getting out of control, where only 2 years beforehand, the administration of Prime Minister Harold Wilson was celebrating the Beatles and the booming youth movement. Now a backlash began. Where once leniency had prevailed, now a number of drug busts were organized, and in February 1967, the police arrived in force at the home of Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards.
Pop stars had soft power, they had cultural power, and what they were saying was increasingly disobedient. But of course the establishment didn't like that, and they increasingly took notice of pop stars and what they were saying. And the Stones really were ideal candidates then for drug busts. When they started to clamp down hard, which was February 1967, the Stones were marked men.
The police were given a tip-off by the News of the World that a drug party was taking place at Keith Richards' home in West Wittering in Sussex, and they raided it on a Sunday night in February. This was the famous bust where Marianne Faithfull was dressed in nothing but a fur rug. All they found was some ash from a marijuana cigarette in an ashtray, a few amphetamines that were actually, I believe, on prescription. And the outcome was that Jagger was sentenced to 3 months in prison for the pills, and Keith Richards got 12 months for allowing his home to be used for this nefarious drug taking.
Personally, I was upset for them and very shocked. We were all instructed to be very, very low key, not to talk to any media. There was a sort of blanket instruction from the Stones office to not do anything to exacerbate that this was a serious situation. And so we were all, definitely upset and distressed and worried for them.
While these arrests further enhanced the Stones' rebellious reputation, they also sidelined the band for much of the counterculture's watershed year. While awaiting trial, they performed a European tour, their last series of shows for more than 2 years, And in May, Brian Jones was also the target of a police raid, and he too would stand trial for drug possession. On America's west coast, however, the counterculture's influence spread unobstructed.